Hello, darkness, our old friend. We are back once again with the third installment of No Dog in the Fight, our Jeb Board fantasy podcast. Nick, it has been a weekend, brother.
Yes, it has. And I'm sure the majority of what went down we'll talk about on the main podcast. But I will say, though, a bright spot to some of our NFL stuff is this podcast because we're pretty consistent with, some of our waiver pickups, our sell high, buy low
Abs-
kind of players. I mean, look at Trey McBride. He's a big one that's really coming out, and Gus Edwards still. So we've been pretty decent so far.
yeah, I mean, Demario Douglas had a pretty
Yeah.
decent week this past week. Josh Dobbs had a great week this past week. Tell him to pick up on waivers. Um, we'll get into it in a little bit, but like just getting into like my sell high was Derrick Henry, and we'll talk about him here in
Hmm.
a second. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, we're like I said, we're pretty consistent, man.
Uh,
We're not doing bad in terms of advice. I wish we'd take our own advice.
yeah, that's the big one. I was sitting there, I think it was Tuesday this week, and I was looking, I was like, okay, so I've got Logan Thomas
Mhm.
uh as my tight end. I was like, okay, I want to swap that up. He's too inconsistent with the Commanders offense. And I was looking, I was like, Trey McBride's available. And I was like, we just talked about it. I said, nah, we'll go Taysom Hill. And Taysom Hill didn't do shit. So
Yeah, I did pick up Trey McBride, but kept him on my bench, and right now he's sitting at 16 points.
yeah. So
So
just again, if we can just take our own advice,
yeah,
seems like we'd be pretty solid.
God, that's what we get for being schizophrenic, I guess.
Yeah, I doubt myself, but
Yeah.
apparently our analysis is okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got like three voices in my head, and they're all arguing which crayon color I need to eat. So, I mean, that's kind of where
Yep.
I'm at.
I got a voice in my head that just speaks Czechoslovakian. So
Mine was Portuguese this weekend.
yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but all right, well, getting into our first segment, like we always do, we're going to talk about our studs and duds. And I mean, just forewarning for everyone again, our studs and duds are just a tiny bit skewed because, I mean, we're recording during the middle games of the day, I guess you can say. Like, I mean, I've got the Cardinals and Falcons pulled up right here, so we're going to be a little bit skewed. But in the same token, most of them are already pretty accurate about our games have already happened or are finished. So Nick, why don't you start us off with our studs as usual?
Yeah. So somebody that's already finished, um, and got a lot of his pieces back that's been kind of looking bad is Brock Purdy.
Mhm.
He wasn't the number one quarterback, but I'm just kind of breaking it off where a lot of people decided to start dropping Brock Purdy because he did have a bad little stretch there, and everybody started immediately condemning him. But he scored 23.84 points against Jacksonville, who's been, a pretty solid mid defense, but he threw three touchdowns for almost 300 yards, had some big breakaway plays and again, I mean, the 49ers are healthy and people say like when Debo went out, they were like, oh, that's not going to affect its next man up because they're so deep, but
Yeah.
kind of just goes to show like he's a very important role in that offense. And so Brock Purdy definitely showed out. And again, he was as of right now, I haven't checked it, but as of like 30 minutes ago, he was the number two quarterback for
Hmm.
the studs. My running back, again, it's kind of hard right now because I did want to say Jameer Gibbs based on, the game's not over yet.
Yeah.
But I went Devin Singletary because I think, with Pierce being out and how bad Pierce has been, Singletary got the majority of the touches, or well, all of the touches. He had 23.1 against Cincinnati. And that, I mean, that was it was a pretty solid outing. He had 150 yards off 30 carries, a touchdown. So that was, he looked pretty good. And then wide receiver is Keenan Allen, who is still not done. Because it was funny when we were doing our notes and everything at the beginning, we were like, okay, he's got like He's got 29 points, and he's definitely your stud for wide receiver. And it has since updated to 40.5. So yeah, Keenan Allen, he's on a tear, not just this game, but this year. And then lastly, is TJ Hawkinson, who I know we'll definitely talk about more later. But just for right now, though, he was the highest scoring tight end with 30.4 against New Orleans.
Yeah. So that'll take us into duds, and the big glaring dud this week in terms of quarterback is Trevor Lawrence. Not only did he only have 185 passing yards, I mean, he had no touchdowns, of course, but he had 2 interceptions and a fumble. So everything that he got from his passing yards, which was only 7.4 points, was negated with that fumble and those 2 interceptions. He only had 7 rushing yards, so I mean that didn't add anything to the mix. So the 49ers defense really put it on him, and realistically, like I will refer to here in a second, really the whole Jags offense. My dud at running back is Derrick Henry this week, who ended the week with 3 points. Like I said, I referred to him as a sell high last week because he had a decent week, and I didn't think he's going to keep up that production. And lo and behold, look where we're at. 11 touches, 24 yards, no touchdowns. He had 1 target and 1 reception for -4 yards. So
Tough.
yeah, and like we've talked about, I think we talked about it on Jeb Board last week about how the Titans are one-dimensional, and that's, I think BB referred to it as their identity. And I made the comment that you can't have an identity if you're not succeeding in that identity. You know, having an identity is like the 49ers having a stellar defense. That's an identity. Or like we've talked about with the Cowboys, how they're more air raid identity. The Titans don't have an identity because the identity that they want, they can't perform.
Yep.
Going into our wide receiver dud this week, Nick's gonna love this one. It is Michael Thomas for New Orleans. Over the past 2 weeks, as Nick pointed out, he has had 3 targets, 1 reception, 9 yards. This past week, he had 1 reception for 9 yards. That's where his points came. So obviously only 1.9 points this week. And not only that, but he got arrested. So make sure you sell him high. But yeah, he got arrested. What was it for? What like I forgot what the actual
So he was outside of his house, and there was construction going on his street, and he picked up a brick, threw it through the construction guy's car, and then like apparently hit one of the construction guys.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know what Derek Carr is doing to these wide receivers, but starting with Ruggs and Henry Ruggs III, Antonio Brown, he never even played a game. He spent a summer with Derek Carr and Chris Olave, and now Michael Thomas. I mean, man, he has a hell of a track record.
Yeah, hell of a track record for his wide receivers' mental health.
Yeah, well, Michael Thomas probably spent more time and more energy breaking that guy's window than he did on the field. So
yeah,
I mean, it just goes to show not just what kind of player he is, but what kind of man he is, because he just loves to let people down.
Yeah. I'll tell you though, I bet when he ran away from that construction worker's car, I bet he hit the meanest ass slant route you've ever seen back to his front door.
Oh yeah, and probably pulled a hammy. It's okay. He still receives his welfare checks.
Yeah. But and that gets into our tight end dud for the week, and it's Evan Ingram. So he had 4 receptions, and like you look at the stat line, and if it was like just revealing itself, you'd be like, oh, 4 receptions. You know, he's probably had at least 45 yards. No, he had 4 receptions for 12 yards.
Yeah.
And 7 targets on top of that. So again, it goes back to the 49ers defense just completely shutting everybody down. So ended up with 5.2 points this week, which is not conducive and not what he's been doing over the past several weeks, especially before this bye week this past week. So getting into waiver pickups, Nick, who do you have for your waiver pickups this week?
So first is, in my opinion, is kind of risky. But we're also at a point too, where also, by the way, just got an update. Trey McBride has 8 receptions for 132 yards now.
Yeah, I saw that deep pass he just caught right there.
So yeah, we were right on that. So let's try and stick with it. This is kind of risky because I don't want to repeat different people that we've already said. But Brandon Cooks is starting to come alive ever since Dallas kind of swapped to full air raid, since they're not going to use Pollard.
Yeah.
And Brandon Cooks, so 3 out of the 4 weeks he scored over 14 points. With this latest week scoring 23.4. So, he's been impressive. He's been getting more targets, and he scored a touchdown in 3 of those 4 games as well. So I think he's going to kind of keep up the productivity, and he could be a solid anywhere from 10 to 14 points on a decent, consistent basis. Mm-hmm. And then next is my true, okay, this is the guy, if he's on waivers, you need to go pick him up, is Noah Brown. Noah Brown for the Texans. Noah Brown, the last 2 games, and I'm going off these 2 games because he's been on injury, and, now you're seeing the surgence of CJ Stroud. I forgot his name. I was watching the Lions walk it off against my Chargers.
Thank God for our picks.
Yeah. That's 4 this year for the Chargers that have lost by a field goal to end it. Anyways, so it is. But Noah Brown though, since the last 2 weeks, he scored 27.3 and 24.2. And he's on a tear. He's been injured for a good bit of the season, but now that he's actually going, and CJ Stroud has this confidence and he's making these huge plays, Noah Brown is a must pick up. So those are my 2. Noah Brown is probably a much safer pickup than Brandon Cooks, but those are mine.
I got you. Well, getting into mine, my first one is Jayden Reed. He has been off and on all year. I mean, you look at his numbers. I mean, it's like I said, up and down, very much so. He'll go from scoring he'll score, like week 2 he scored 19, then he scored 9, then he scored 10, then he scored 1.7. So he's consistently, I think it's 9.8 is his average, but I think that Green Bay is, I want to say they're kind of shifting their focus. I don't know if it's necessarily shifting their focus, but going into this year, Christian Watson was kind of like their de facto number 1, right? And supposedly, and he's been hurt a couple times, or he started off the year hurt.
He's been hurt since he's got in the league.
Yeah. So, but when he starts the game, he's their de facto number 1. So I think picking up Jayden Reed, he's not going to have a lot of targets a game. The most targets he's had was 8 against Atlanta. Other than that, he's averaging about 4 to 5 targets a game. But if the ball is thrown to him, he catches it. So, I mean, the past 3-4 games, he's only had 3 drop passes. So, or 3 targets not caught. So I would pick up Jayden Reed as one of my players on waiver. My other player that I would pick up is Ty Chandler, the running back from Minnesota, because it looks like Alexander Mattison got hurt this past week. And so, or he's at least going to be questionable with a concussion, I believe you said.
Yes.
Yeah, he's probably going to miss a week. So, that being said, he had 15 carries for 45 yards with a touchdown. And then he didn't have any receptions, but depending on, and Arizona just walked it off.
Yes, they did. Shout out, baby.
Yeah, if he's still alive at this point.
Who knows?
Um, but yeah, but going back to it, yeah, I'd pick up Ty Chandler just at least for these next couple weeks, just to have that volume because I I think that I think the Vikings are still going to rely on their rush defense or rushing offense a little bit more with Dobbs, just to kind of help him out, alleviate some of that stress from being QB1. I mean, obviously he was checking down a lot to Tyler Hawkinson, or at least getting to his tight end. So I think having a decent run game there as well is going to help him, and I think they'll feed Ty Chandler the ball, especially this coming up week, a lot more.
Yeah.
So going into our sell high and buy low, I'll start off the sell high this for this week, and I'm gonna say sell Brian Robinson Jr. high. The reason being, Buddy has 27.6 points today versus Seattle. And I mean, he's got 6 receptions for 119 yards and a touchdown, so that's what helps out. He's catching the ball out of the backfield. He averages 12.7 yards a game, but that average is up. The reason why the average is up is because he scored 28 points week 2, 27 points this week at least. Then he scored like 13 here, and 11 here. Other than that, it's been like sub 8 or 8 or below. So he's not going to put you up consistent numbers. Well, he will put you up consistent numbers, but it's going to be consistently 8 to 9 points. So
Yeah.
I would say get rid of Brian Robinson Jr., sell him high, put it on a spin, say he's going to be the receiving back for a pass heavy Washington team, and try to get him out of your lineup for something more valuable. So what about you for your sell high, Nick?
So I'm actually kind of going against what I said maybe last week or the week before when I was saying, because my sell high is David Montgomery. When we were talking about it, I thought when David Montgomery comes back from injury that Gibbs would fall off. Well, Gibbs did not. Gibbs is getting a majority of the touches. Gibbs is getting the goal line touches. And so David Montgomery benefited from his 80 or 70 yard touchdown run today. So he still scored pretty high. But based on trends, I think he can start to lose targets, lose touches, and from there, he could put up some of those 5 to 10 point games. And if you're looking for something higher, you could probably get a good bit from him. So yeah, right now Gibbs is going up, David Montgomery is trending down. And so yeah, I'd try and go ahead and sell him, because if you wait until next week, it's probably going to be tough.
Yeah.
But
well, go ahead and lead off with a buy low too.
so he's actually my stud is Devin Singletary. After this week, I real like Damian Pierce is on injury, and I think when he comes back, I personally think Devin Singletary is going to get more carries and more targets than Damian Pierce, because Damian Pierce has been like hot shit this year. And so, and Devin Singletary comes out and puts up 150 yards on 30 carries. And it's like, okay, is it really the offensive line's fault then if he can do it, but, Damian Pierce can't? And I'm not saying, Damian Pierce isn't capable, because he was really fun last year. But ever since his injury, he's just not been the same player this year. And so Devin Singletary should be the starter next week. And with that offense and how it goes, I think Devin Singletary can get 15 to 18 points.
Yeah. So I kind of have the same logic you do for my buy low. So my buy low is Jaylen Warren. And I kind of have the same thought process in terms of he's going to start getting more carries and more touches than Najee Harris. Jaylen Warren, over the past 2 weeks, he's had 14.3 points and 19. 11 touches for 88 yards last week just on the ground. And then this week, in terms of rushing, 15 touches for 101 yards. So, and a touchdown with that on top of 9 receiving yards and 2 receptions. So he is making the best out of limited touches. And let's be honest, like I put in our group message earlier, Kenny Pickett is hot ass. Kenny Pickett is bad. The Steelers are going to have to run the ball, and the Steelers are what I think the Titans want to be. They have a kind of like a 2-headed running back system. Granted, Najee Harris, I don't think Najee Harris is that great, but being able to get 15 touches on 101 yards and then just looking up Najee Harris, I feel like he had a decent game on the ground as well. I mean, he had 18.6 points this week, but he had 82 yards rushing. That's 183 yards.
Yep.
So they're going to continue to run the ball. Jaylen Warren is a little bit more versatile, I believe, in terms of catching the ball out of the backfield. Granted, it's Kenny Pickett's the one throwing it to him, but I feel like by the end of this year, Jaylen Warren is going to get, instead of almost halving it with Najee Harris, I feel like he's going to be getting 75% of touches.
I can see that happening. Very possible.
Absolutely. But all right, well, that moves us into the final segment as the Cowboys are beating the Giants 42-10. Best possible lineups for this week. Nick, why don't you start us off?
So we'll kind of do what we always do. I'll just give you my quarterback and then we'll go from there. I've got CJ Stroud. Another 350-yard performance. CJ Stroud, I mean, in my opinion, since the MVP position is based on, it's basically a quarterback award. I think CJ Stroud should be in contention for it based on the value that he's brought the Texans. But I mean, again, 450 yards last week, 350 this week. There's no reason he should slow down against the Cardinals.
Agreed. I'm going with Sam Howell. As we have seen, and we talked about earlier, they're pass heavy, just like a team that's playing the Giants right now, the Cowboys, who are pass heavy. Mm-hmm. So the New York Giants secondary is just terrible. And teams that jump out on them, they can't do anything about it. So I feel like with the receiving core that we have talked about and the addition of Brian Robinson Jr. and Antonio Gibson.
He caught a touchdown.
Yeah, today. I feel like with those two, plus the receiving core of Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas at tight end, I feel like they're just going to dice, or he's going to dice New York up. And I honestly would not be surprised if you see another 30-point performance from him this coming up week. With my running back, I'm actually going to go Travis Etienne versus Tennessee. I just don't think Tennessee can slow. Their defense is good enough to slow anybody down. This is going to be a divisional matchup, so I think that Jacksonville is going to come ready to play. From what I have, you probably know this better than I do, but from what I've seen, besides maybe like a couple games at the beginning of the season, Etienne doesn't put up bad back-to-back weeks, does he?
No, not this year, at least. I mean, he didn't score a touchdown, and they got down. There were multiple factors why he was kind of a dud this week, but I don't foresee that happening again.
Well, I feel like the Jacksonville offense in general opens up more, and that's going to open up Etienne more, and he's going to be back on track to having, 17 plus this week.
Yep. Okay. So I'm about to get into my interesting one for my running backs, because I don't just have one running back. I have,
3, maybe 4,
potentially 3, maybe 4. So I said whichever Ravens running back that gets the ball the most, because they are playing the Bengals. Bengals cannot stop the run.
Nope.
Problem is, we just don't know who's going to get the most touches from the Ravens. But the Ravens are the most efficient running back group out of all the teams that want to run the ball.
Yeah.
The only one that I might I wouldn't even say San Francisco, just because San Francisco is more balanced at this point now, but they just skew their stats because Chris McCaffrey averages like 20 yards a run. So
Yeah.
the attempts, though, I could see Gus Edwards, maybe Justice Hill, and Keaton Mitchell all going for good amounts, but I could see one of them, like Gus Edwards, having another 2 touchdown performance, or Keaton Mitchell breaking off something, or Justice Hill too. So I say one of them. 2, I don't know yet, but
Yeah.
one of them.
Yeah. So it's like roulette.
Yeah.
You're Russian roulette.
But that's just their offense right now.
Yeah. Well, I know you had a hard time picking your wide receiver. So if you want to explain your receiver pick.
So the very, very, very bright spot on a very dark team, that is my team of the Chargers, is Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen is a fantasy monster. He is a monster in the NFL, 40-point performance, and they're going up against the Packers. It won't be any different. Mike Williams definitely is, he's out for the season, so there's really no true. Josh Palmer's out too. So the only other guy that's really even, an option is, that's so funny. Sorry, I just saw another Cowboys running back score a touchdown, but Pollard still can't. But yeah, the Chargers wide receiver core has kind of been dwindled, and Keenan Allen just seems to have picked up right where everybody else left off.
Yeah.
And he is
the receiving core.
Yeah. When they say next man up, Keenan Allen, like, okay, I'll take his stats too. Like, he just packs it on. So yeah, Keenan Allen's gonna have another big week.
Agreed. With mine, I picked Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean,
Very
the dude
safe pick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny because the dude is he's only ranked 10 at position, which I didn't realize.
He missed like 2-3 weeks off injury.
Yeah, that's fair. But he had 30.5 points, 9 targets, 8 yards, 156, or 9 targets, 8 receptions, 156 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's automatic.
Most underrated receiver in the league.
The lowest he has scored this year is 14.2 points in what was it, against Seattle, and he still had 102 yards receiving.
Is that not the week that? No, never mind. I thought that was the week that he left with injury.
No, that was a couple weeks. That was the Green Bay game. Okay. But yeah, and as we've kind of seen, like, Chicago's defense isn't necessarily the best. They may have bolstered up a little bit with Montez Sweat getting traded, but one player is not going to do that much. So I foresee St. Brown to have, another 20-point game right there.
St. Brown is one of those receivers that you don't even need to look at what defense they're playing, because he's going to carve them up.
Yeah. He is honestly like, he is what Kelce was last year in terms of wide receivers. Yes. It doesn't matter who he's going to play. He's going to put up his numbers.
Yep.
So, and then that gets to our
communism.
Hour. I guess our tight end, TJ Hawkinson, man, that the combination of him and Josh Dobbs is just, it's unreal how well their chemistry is working in week 2 of him being in Minnesota.
Yeah. Hawkinson is the last couple of weeks, and I would say for most of the year, except for maybe a couple games, has truly played like the tight end number 1 over Kelce. I would say Hawkinson's had a better year than Kelce. I think Kelsey is still tight end one, but when Hawkinson has a bad game, it's like, oh, you get 14 points. When Travis Kelsey has a bad game, it's like 5 points. But the problem is when Travis Kelsey has a good game, it's like 45, 50 fucking points. Versus Hawkinson, he gets those 30, but he gets the 30s more consistently this year. Or I would say as of like the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So yeah, God, Hawkinson and Josh Dobbs, it's been insane.
Well,
And it
and it's
shouldn't stop.
well, and it's also a difference in. I mean the big difference that helps him out is the difference in quarterback play styles because as we have seen, Kirk Cousins, he tries to be the gunslinger. I mean, throwing the ball down the field, and that has come back to bite him in the ass a lot.
Yep.
But like we talked about last week, Josh Dobbs is more like, he's not. I wouldn't say he's necessarily trying to prove himself, but he's still wary of being in that starting spot. So he is going to play it more safe than sorry, and not sling the ball like a Kirk Cousins or a Jameis Winston. He's going to check down and get it to his guy that he knows is open. But on top of all of this, they're playing Denver next week.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're playing that terrible, terrible Denver defense. So from all the things we just said, and you throw that into the mix, like TJ Hawkinson may have 100 points.
Yeah. I agree. That's it. Yeah. There's no reason Hawkinson shouldn't score over 22.
Yeah. So, well, that gets into our flex spot for the week, and we actually picked two players from the same game, but just opposite sides of the field.
So I went Mike Evans. Mike Evans, since being off injury, he had his big game this week with, I think it was close to 27 points. And, Chris Godwin has been a good compliment through their entire career, honestly, when they've been playing together. But Mike Evans against San Francisco, all we talk about is their defense, yes. But I think Chris Godwin will serve more as that deep threat that Charvarius Ward and Hufanga will kind of trade, and they'll kind of push towards him while Mike Evans is running that 15 crosser.
Yeah.
That 15-yard crossing route. And I think that's going to happen a lot. And I think, in my opinion, no offense to your Bucks, but I think the only thing the Bucks can do in this game is going to be throw the intermediate ball. No short routes, no long routes. The only chink in that San Francisco defense is the intermediate routes.
It's like those passes that you basically give your you have to give your quarterback about between 3 to 4 seconds to throw.
Yep.
And to let them run that deep. God, what is it? What's the play on Madden? It's not. Is it the Texas Post?
Yeah.
Run that drag, basically running like a incline across the field, something like that, or like a 10-yard drag or something like that. That's what's gonna, because like we've talked about. I mean, beating a dead horse. San Francisco's defense is just insane. And then you throw in guys like Fred Warner, who is one of the best linebackers in the league on all fronts.
Yeah.
The best way to abuse their defense is hit that spot right between the linebackers and the safeties. And that's what they're going to have to do. Well, you went with Evans. I went with McCaffrey. I mean, that's safe. I mean, for me, but in the same token, I feel like McCaffrey is going to come back for a little bit of revenge from not scoring a touchdown this week. So I think he's going to go out. Unfortunately, I think he's going to ball out against Tampa Bay. I don't think they're going to be able to stop him. Because the thing is, like, Tampa Bay's actual rushing defense is not bad. Their front seven is actually pretty good. But they don't necessarily perform well against the bubble screens, the passes out to the flat. They don't necessarily perform well against that. Levante David and Devin White, they're quick and they're fast and they play very hard. But playing against someone like McCaffrey, like you're going to have to take hellacious angles and get to him as quick as you can. And it's almost like spying a QB. You're going to have to spy McCaffrey.
Well, you know, the Bucks defense has been good. It really has, as far as like the run defense. But just like we were talking about with St. Brown, is it doesn't matter how good of a defense when you're going up against Christian McCaffrey, because he's going to get his points in fantasy. Yeah. And hell, I mean, again, like he scored 20 points a day without the touchdown. And the touchdown has been what's guaranteeing him over 10 points every week, and he doesn't score, but he still gets 20 points. I mean, it just does not matter.
Yeah. But well, all right, Nick. Well, I think that wraps us up for episode 3.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
kind of flew by, but
it did. It did.
I think our analysis and predictions are pretty solid, pretty safe. So again, it's just those little tips that can help you. You know, again, if we can just take our own advice this week, maybe we'll actually do something too.
Yeah, well, I just can't wait for the 1 week we screw up and then we get all the hate mail.
Can't wait.
Yeah, it's gonna make sure you send it to Nick, not me.
Yeah, just don't leave a return address.
But all right, guys. Well, like I said, that's it for episode 3. Make sure you guys check us out on all the socials that I'm not going to say because I get tired of saying them. Go check out the Twitter and the
where it's at.
Twitter and the Instagram. You go find it. And until next week, guys, don't get faded.